Good afternoon, morning, day. How's it going?
Who knows? Who knows?
We're 24 hours a day on this planet.
It's afternoon for me, morning for you. How is it? Where are you?
I'm in beautiful Beaver Creek, Colorado, the ski resort where we have the big mining conference. Yeah. I've stepped outside, and here you can let everybody see the whole drill.
Look at that. That's Beaver Creek. That's huge.
Yeah, it is. There's ski lifts that go up in this direction. You can walk down, to different hotels along here, and then you can take a little drive down to Avon. And for some of your listeners that may not know where it is, Vail is just a few, maybe it's 20 miles down the way, and Breckenridge and Steamboat. So all of the great Colorado ski hills are right here. And the conference itself is really one of the go-to junior mining places. All the funders come here, the banks, the research analysts, the newsletter writers, and a lot of, all of the half decent exploration companies and development companies and bigger companies too. So lots and lots of meetings. Guanajuato Silver ended up with I think I met with 32 different people here the last few days, including one of the research analysts just this morning for breakfast. Then I got a couple of coffee meetings, and then I got to drive back down to Denver.
Well, sweet. Mr. James Anderson of Guanajuato Silver, thank you very much for joining us. You're joining the weekend club. All relaxed. You're relaxed. Nice setting. I like it.
I got my mining puffy vest on. That's what they wear in Guanajuato.
I should be down by the pool. That's where I should have set this up down by the pool with my laptop. In fact, that's going to happen next time. Be much easier. Hey, well, look, appreciate you joining us. We did have a kind of catch up just over a couple of weeks ago. We thought this might be better timing. You've had a bunch of meetings. You've got a few more to do. Just gives us a sense of the mood there, because I agree with you. I think that, and obviously Denver, Colorado next week, are two of probably 5 conferences which matter for junior miners. The rest are just a waste of time. But what's the mood?
I think the mood is somber and professional. I've been to these conferences, over many, many years. Sometimes they are a little bit euphoric. Sometimes they are, I don't know, like a dirge, like a funeral. But here right now, I think the people who are here, the people who are still in business, the people who have journeyed from wherever they've come from here, they're in business. They're somber and professional. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think I was speaking to a CEO yesterday about it. He's down there. He shall remain nameless, but he was just delighted to see other human beings and actually do transact business face to face. It's been far too long. Well, look, we better dive down into it. So, in sense of, you've had 32 meetings. What have you been telling them? What have they been asking you?
Well, I think one of the things that I found really interesting the last few days. So there were a number of the bigger funds, right, that are probably too big. They want to deploy too much money for our market cap right now. People that maybe haven't heard of Guanajuato Silver and what we're doing. So I've had to kind of, and you only got 20 minutes, 25 minutes in these meetings, right? So I give them a 2-minute update on what we're doing, and the pitch. What I've been saying, Matthew, as well. We had an exploration project in Guanajuato last year that we did a 1,000-ton bulk sample on. We did a deep dive on whether we wanted to buy El Cubo, signed a letter agreement with Endeavour in December, raised 17 million Canadian dollars in March, signed a definitive agreement with them in April, drew down $7.5 million from our lending facility in July, spent that money to refurbish the mill. We are mining right now, and we'll have the mill operating within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Nobody does all that in 12 months. And I'm, even as I was saying it, I'm going, wow, that's pretty impressive. So I'm happy about that. I'm proud of that, and I have a part to play in that. But really, it's the team that we have on the ground in Mexico that has allowed us to do all that.
Okay, so tell us what you have actually been doing. That's a lot of money, and I saw the drawdown. It's actually shortly after we spoke, about a week or so after we spoke last time. So what have you actually done with that cash? Have you burned through all of it?
No, we've got about $8 million US in our treasury right now. What have we been doing? Buying cone crushers, refurbishing the mill, ball mill liners, a number of different engineering groups coming in, looking at all of the component parts of the plant, making sure that everything's running correctly. Best to do that now rather than during downtime later on, and then mining as well. So we now have 8 or 10,000 tons of good grade material from Cubo in the laydown yard right beside the mill. So once we start processing, once the mill is fully functional in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we can take that material and start processing it. So that obviously costs money as well, all the blasting and mining, paying our mine contractors to extract that mineral, which is in inventory right now in our laydown yard.
So I guess what the question people are going to be asking is, and it's a much more forgiving period when you get there, is when do you start producing cash?
Well, I think we'll be selling concentrate in October.
Okay. Right, and there's a kind of little ramp up period, I suspect, in terms of optimization. So.
Yeah, there's a huge ramp up period, and a huge ramp up period meaning that we will ramp up in terms of the number of tons that we'll be mining and processing between now and July of next year. We'll also be ramping up significantly. So we not only ramp up in terms of tons, but we ramp up in terms of grade. So not only do the tons get higher and higher each quarter, but the number of silver equivalent ounces, silver and gold ounces that we produce each month and each quarter going forward will ramp up as well.
When would you expect to be sort of positive cash flow on this project, this asset, right? Because you've got different phases and different projects that you're talking about. So as a company, it's a bit more of a difficult thing to ask. But in terms of when do you think you're going to be at a point where the AISC on this part of what you've got is positive cash flow?
EBITDA positive in the first quarter, and okay. As we ramp up in terms of grade and tons, we really start to throw off a lot of cash mid next year. That's just when our repayment schedule for the $7.5 million loan kicks in. So there's a little bit of overlap like that. But I don't see any reason why that's not. What we've always modeled about 25 to 30% of our cash flow will go to paying back that loan on a monthly basis for the 12-month repayment, and I don't see anything that's going to change that.
Okay, so that 7.5 you drew down, is that the full facility that you've drawn
yes.
down there, or will you? It is. If needs must, do you think that they'd be open to sort of topping up a little bit for you?
The short answer is yes. Also, with conversations that we've had with other capital providers, I mean, everybody's very happy with what we're doing. But we have access to lots of different avenues for capital.
Okay, but with OCIM obviously being a European metals trader, they have expectations. So just remind me the terms there.
Yeah. Okay. So the terms go like this. So in July we drew down $7.5 million. On the day that we did that, we note the price of gold and silver, closing price in London. We then take a 15% discount from those closing prices. That's the gold and silver pricing that we repay the $7.5 million. So we get a 6-month grace period. First payments are in February, and we pay, they are set amounts of gold and silver that we must pay for those 12 months. And the numbers, I don't have them in front of me, Matthew, but it's something like 180 ounces of gold per month and about 19,000 ounces of silver per month. It's 60-40 in terms of value, silver and gold. We do that for 12 months, and that's it. There's no other prepay. There's no warrants. There's no this. There's no that. It's a very clean lending facility.
And there's no obligation on your part once that's paid back.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. Right. So that kind of gives a little bit of timing on what's going on there. There's a few questions sent in with regards to all the other moving bits that I referred to a second ago in terms of better Metre, for instance, Pinguico and Torres. I mean, what's happening with all the other parts, or is it just let's get focused on this and deliver cash flow?
Well, we're pretty focused on that. I think it'd be a big mistake if we, got distracted and didn't have material going through the mill, on time, what I like to say, on track, on time, and on budget. That's where we are. We do continue to drill at Pinguico. Results have been slow in coming back. We're on drill hole 19 or 20 here at this point, so there'll be added information and assays on that in the weeks ahead. If you go to the website and to our presentation, there's a nice long section there now of where we've drilled and where we're going to drill between now and January. Again, we own our own underground diamond drill, right? So we don't have the problem that a lot of other companies do. The drill companies come in and they go out. We can continue to do that kind of, round the clock and month in, month out.
Right, and so in terms of the stockpiling that you've been doing of the vein material, I mean, how much have you got? I mean, and what does that give you in terms of inventory to put through?
Well, the 3 stopes that we're looking at right now, we think internally there's about 240,000 tons there. So that's 10 months worth of material at 25,000 tons a month through the mill, right? So we're in very good shape that way. In terms of stuff that we've actually mined to date, there's 8 or 10,000 tons in the laydown yard here right now.
Okay. So and you're.
I mean, we're running out of space. We're running out, but the miners are saying, "Hey, guys, turn on the plant already, so we can have a place to put the ore here at this point."
Right, so things are going well in terms of to the plan. As you say, it has happened in an accelerated time frame. So kudos for that. You've got to get to the point where that project, obviously, you understand the economics better and what those margins are going to be. You pay down the debt. You outline how long that's going to take, and then is that it for El Cubo? I mean, where are you going to be spending the money next on El Cubo specifically?
On El Cubo specifically, well, in terms of exploration, we haven't spoken very much about it. There's 2 major northwest structures that we will be mining. One is called Villalpando, one is called Dolores. They're separated by about 700 meters. What's very well known in the district and what's very well known at El Cubo is transverse veins that cut the main structures at about 90 degrees. And they're not subtle. Like when I'm underground and driving in the mine, I'm looking up and go, whoa, wait a second. Like what's that structure? Have we mapped that? Have we sampled that? Right? Endeavor never really chose to pursue those because they had this mindset that they needed lots of tons. Those transverse structures are generally smaller than the main structures. They might be as small as 80 centimeters, maybe 1.5 meters wide, but they're very good grade. Generally, they're higher in gold content than in silver content than the main structures on a value basis. But they're good grade, and some of the examples of early sampling that we've got are very good, and we can chase those. We can mine those.
So what are you seeing in terms of grade? So interest me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll cuff you a couple numbers, maybe, Matthew. A lot of the sampling that we're doing at El Cubo right now, in with what I'm talking about, we send to a non-ISO lab because we get results back in 8 days. We send it to an ISO lab, we get results back in 3 months. That ain't good enough for us. We'll have our own lab built at Cubo, the first half of it by the end of October, and then the rest of it in November. But yeah, I mean, we're often seeing 400, 500, 600 gram silver equivalent stuff, sometimes into the kilos, per ton. So it's very good grade.
Okay, so more of that anon. With regards to the kind of maintenance ongoing, what your expectation about the ongoing monthly cost at El Cubo? Have you got a sense of that yet?
Monthly cost at El Cubo?
Yeah. I don't know how you're going to silo your costs, but I guess what I'm trying to get to, at what point do you give guidance to the market and say, look, I think El Cubo is going to be responsible for X amount of dollars free cash flow for us to either plow back in as exploration or further underground development. I mean, you know what I mean?
It's a fantastic question, and one of the problems with answering the question is all of the regulatory rules about how I answer that question. Lisa Day, our CFO, has constructed a very fulsome financial model that, because this is essentially a startup, I mean, it changes often, but we've got a really solid look at the financial aspects of the whole business. In terms of guidance, how do we go about that and when do we go about it? I think we're smarter to wait until we're actually putting some material through the mill before we establish that for the market. But I also, I'm going to rely on some of our expert legal counsel to figure out when we do that and how we do that.
No, that's fair enough. I need to ask because I think, like I say, you delivered it quickly. You're going to be producing soon. You're going through an optimization period, and Q1, I guess the economics will be better understood. But that is the bulk of the questions coming in here is like, how good is this? Is it we're making money kind of good, or we're making money, but it's all going to go back in the ground good? Or is there going to be some, meaningful contribution to the other projects in the portfolio kind of good, right?
So it's making money kind of good, EBITDA positive in the first quarter kind of good, very sustainable in terms of an ongoing business model kind of good. Remember we've got the 2 million tons of material outlined in the PEA at Cubo. Well, some of that material needs some development work. $1.5 million worth of development work reinvested in the business every quarter. That's baked into the model. Other exploration work, both at Cubo and at Pinguico, and at some of the other 7,000 hectares of ground that we've got. So very much a recycling of that money into the business to make it bigger and stronger and sustainable. Is the sun okay there?
Yeah, it's fine. We're good. You look great. In fact, you look like you're sitting at someone's settee at home, but just with an amazing backdrop. That's what settee. There's a 60s phrase. Sofa. Okay, so that's kind of quite helpful insight. You mentioned a word there. It's scale. Because sustainability is one thing, but you can be, low contributing sustainability. Basically, the mine's just running itself to keep the mine running. It's running to stand still. You've got to go through a process of saying, well, this thing can be big, it can be meaningful, and certainly meaningful enough to get funders interested in us to maybe make an acquisition elsewhere or further develop the land package. Do you know what I mean? So I know it's early days, but I just want some sense of intent from you, because you've shown you're capable of getting something accelerated through to production quickly. You saw something that others didn't. I like that. But how do you take that skill, that intent, that kind of aggression, and move it forward and get that scale delivered?
Yeah, okay. So let me answer a number of those questions, then we'll talk philosophy a little bit. First of all, let's put our cards on the table. El Cubo is never going to be an enormous mining operation, right?
Exactly.
This is not going to be one of Mark Bristow's, tier 1 mining assets. What it will and can do, if approached correctly, if approached the way that we're going to do it, it can be sustainable for decades. It's been in operation on and off for 200 years. I can see decades worth of production. To answer another one of your questions, so we ramp up to about 1.5 million silver equivalent ounces in 2022. We ramp up to 2.5 million silver equivalent ounces in 2023, and I think that's steady state going forward. Is that a huge operation? It's not, but what we can do, and one of the reasons why we call the company Guanajuato Silver, there are all kinds of other assets within the district, within this 480-year mining district, that we think that we can do business on and either acquire or do some kind of business on it and increase the business, expand the business in that way.
Right, and but hopes and dreams of CEOs everywhere. You'd say that, right? But you've got some in the portfolio today. I want to kind of get to the point where you proved yourself over here. Cubo, brilliant. Pinguico, which we first started talking about in our first conversation, last Torres. We've not really talked about, and we've kind of talked about the theory of, the Veta Madre, then come, and everything that could entail in terms of scale. But so how do you tackle those things? And when? What's it going to cost you?
I don't know if I have a good answer for you this morning. I'm pretty excited about putting some material through that mill in a few weeks.
You should
selling some concentrate, making sure that our financial model is real, is robust, is intact. Everything that you mentioned, is certainly on our minds. We want to do that.
Right.
With regarding drilling for Veta Madre, I mean, we've been talking about that for a while. That was kind of pushed off because we were so busy doing everything else. When I was there a month ago, I had an idea that we could drill that from one of the new claims that we acquired in the El Cubo transaction. When I was there, our geologist who's in charge of exploration at Pinguico, Lauro Barahan, we went out and saw exactly how that existed in the field, and he's convinced me that a better way to drill for that Veta Madre contact than the contact between the major structure of Veta Madre and the Pinguico system, a better way to drill it's going to be from our original Pinguico property, and on the very south side of that property. All of the stratigraphy is down dropped that way. And what he feels is that we're going to be about 150 meters closer to that contact, so that our drill holes maybe have to be 350 meters rather than 500 meters to hit that. So in the weeks and months ahead, we'll be doing that. I want to drill that target. I can't give you a firm date on when we're going to do that just yet.
Okay, fair enough. But certainly something I want to come back to you. Do you think, by dint of you getting into production, you are going to be able to have conversations with financiers about funding acquisitions? You kind of referred to it earlier. Like I said, you've got a portfolio of projects there, but there may be deals to be done because silver's come off a bit, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to be, I think, either assets which are good, but companies don't necessarily engender confidence, and they are going to be financially stranded. Do you think there are opportunities like that where you're operating?
Yes. So the first part of your question, yes, absolutely. And sometimes the stock market makes sense. A lot of times it doesn't. But I know that the moment that we have some top line revenue, the moment that we're sending some material through that mill, the market will treat us differently. Investors treat us differently. Financiers treat us differently. There's doors that open that don't open prior to that. So that is the case. In terms of assets that are, I keep using the word stranded. Maybe that's fair, maybe it isn't. But assets that we look at Guanajuato and say, well, that would look best for all parties under one umbrella. There's public companies, big public companies, small public companies with those assets. There's also private companies, private interests in Mexico who own deposits, who don't have a mill, who don't have a tailings facility, because in Guanajuato, like many other places in the world, it's actually the tailings facilities that's maybe the most important asset that you've got, right? You can build a mill, right? Get a permit for a tailings facility, why don't you? That's the tricky part.
That's interesting, actually, because I think we're starting to see that come through. Because if you look back to last year, 2020, right? A lot of promotional activity from companies because money was easy to come by. Just tell a good story, you kind of got money thrown at you. When the rubber hits the road, and I'm using that phrase a lot at the moment because we're seeing it happen more and more. It's like when you're in a position as a company to actually have to make that move to get into production, to be able to produce dollars, some companies just haven't got it because the asset is technically more difficult than perhaps the studies suggest. The management teams don't make the right decisions at the right time, like they said they could. And we're starting to see a lot more M&A, and a few roll-ups, and like I say, private as well as public, but better priced opportunities if you're able to go and raise the money in the company, in the market, by proving that you are capable. And I guess you've just done that. So that's why I asked the question, if that's part of the thought. And when I asked earlier about intent and aggression, I mean, I'm trying to understand where you guys go.
Okay, yeah. So intent, I think our intent should be well known to observers and listeners. We want to be a more important company, based not necessarily strictly in the Guanajuato area, but certainly in central Mexico. Are there opportunities of which you describe? Yeah, there absolutely are. What's interesting, yeah, I think you've seen this over the years too, Matthew, in terms of M&A activity, in terms of doing business deals. When you get a big bull move in the commodity cycle, in whatever commodity you're talking about, a lot of times nothing gets done, because the commodities are moving so fast that people get, that people's perception of what those assets are worth changes very quickly. Usually it takes a correction, of which we're seeing right now, to be able to have everybody settle down and go, okay, well, wait a second. What actual business transactions can we do in a pricing environment that everybody can more reasonably agree on, that where the buyers and the sellers can more easily agree that this isn't a runaway price market.
I agree with that. There's a kind of a cleansing moment, isn't there? Right, and it feels like that, not just for silver, but in a number of other commodities at the moment, where there's kind of the pricing reset allows people to just stop, think, breathe, reevaluate, and then make their moves if they're able. And I find it's not everyone's able to. And that's sort of an interesting time. And again, lots of questions sent in about what do you think about the reset and the silver prices. And for me, good, very good, because you'd have taken this price 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I suspect. Certainly a few years ago. I think too, since our intent, since we are desirous to expand the company in the way that we've been discussing, well, a totally runaway precious metals environment is not necessarily helpful for that. Not for people, not for us who want to acquire things. So today's pricing, today's market action, this pullback is not a surprise for me. You never know when or how deep or how that's going to work, but things don't go straight up forever. And there's a pause here that it totally makes sense to me. But I also think that generally speaking, I want to be in the precious metals business. I want to be in the gold and silver mining business, because I think that that all of the things that brought us to this stage in the bull market are going to continue. Mr. Anderson, it's been good talking to you today. I know you've got a few more meetings to get out of the way. I wish you success with the ones you've had, and also with the ones you're about to have. And maybe come back on and talk us through when you get pouring silver. We want to see that. Okay, fantastic. We'll do that, and I look forward to speaking with you next. We may well have a mill that's up and running by that time. Best of luck. I'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Thank you. Thanks again. Bye.